Okay, as many of you guys know, we have a podcast. I have a podcast I share with a fellow by the name of Zach Bitter. Zach is the world record holder in the 100 mile trail run and the 100 mile or 12-hour world record holder on a flat track. And we call it the Human Performance Outliers. We've had a number of just tremendous guests on over the last year that we've been doing the podcast. Just a tremendous who's name of people, particularly in the low carb space, but a number of athletes, bodybuilders, and other people of great interest. We recently had last night a fellow by the name of Bobby Risto on. Bobby is a fairly prominent vegan YouTube advocate who recently switched out of being a vegan due to health reasons. And we had a really great talk with him regarding all sorts of aspects around veganism. You know, his end result is he basically would recommend that no one ever does veganism for what I think are fairly good reasons, particularly regarding health reasons. You know, it's something that there's some great topics in there. I talk about how, you know, he understands that a number of other very popular vegans are going to be soon leaving veganism, as many have already done. It's going to continue to happen. He talks about how many of these young kids that are adopting veganism are basically being funded to do so by some plant, based processed food manufacturing, plant protein people, and so on and so forth. He also talks about the inadequacies of the diet and how a lot of the vegan health is so distorted and completely wrong. But one of the important topics that we got into revolves around ethics, and I think this is an important point. And so if we look at sort of the tenets of veganism, or the main driving rationale behind veganism, and many people say veganism is not a diet, it's a conscious decision, it's a lifestyle, it's a way of eating in which the goal, or a way of living, in which the goal is to minimize animal suffering, cruelty, and death as much as humanly possible. And if that is truly the goal, then really veganism is not the answer to that. I mean, if you really want to think about it. Now let's talk about food production. All food production, and there may be an exception to this, but all food production, for the most part, for humans, whether it's plant-based or animal-based, is going to result in just a massive amount of death from the animal standpoint. You know, just from clearing crops, from using pesticides, for harvesting crops. Literally thousands and thousands, and if not millions, and in fact billions of animals will die for that. That is undeniably true, right? The amount of animals that get run over by harvesters every year is tremendous. They don't just run out of the way. They just don't escape. They get killed. They get run over. People that work in those processing centers can easily attest to that. Farmers that do both animal and plant agriculture will tell you that growing the plants kills far more animals. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Now, the counter to that often is, well, you know, we feed cows grains, and therefore there's animals getting killed anyway, and therefore you're killing an extra animal. And that is true in certain parts of the world. But if we look at, if we're looking at veganism as a worldwide movement, in the United States, there are 95 million cows approximately. Of those 95 million cows, about 14 million of them are eating grain at any one period of time. That's not to say that they don't all mostly do that. Most of them do. Probably something like 3 to 5% in the United States tend to be finished out on grass, and that number is rising to some degree. Worldwide, of the 1.4 billion cows, the vast majority of them are not in feedlots. In fact, feedlots are mostly a U.S. phenomenon. There's a few in Australia, there's a few in the U.K. and other parts of Europe, but mostly this is a U.S. phenomenon. So of those 1.4 billion cows in the world, approximately 1% are actually being fed grain. And so it's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So if we really wanted to minimize animal suffering, realizing that no matter what you eat, you're going to kill, a lot of animals are going to die. They don't care if they're dying because they are accidentally run over by a harvester, or if they were killed so one of us were to eat them. It doesn't make a difference to those animals. The suffering is still the same. In fact, arguably, the suffering is way worse in these animals that are being ripped apart by grain harvesters or poisoned by pesticides and starved to death because their habitat has been gone. I think that arguably is much worse. If you really wanted to minimize your impact on animal suffering, then you would eat a large animal. You would eat a large animal that was raised on grass, and you would minimize animal suffering and death. I mean, it's as clear as that. Eat grass-finished beef. That's probably the best thing you can possibly do to minimize animal suffering. You know, it's just unequivocally true. Maybe the exception to that is if you moved out to the jungle and only ate fruit and harvested and picked your own fruit. You know, maybe you could do that. That may arguably result in less animal suffering. But what happens? We see what happens to these raw fruitarians. They get sick, they get emaciated, their teeth fall out. They suffer end-stage veganism quicker than other vegans. I mean, that's what clearly happens. And so if you're thinking about it from an ethical standpoint, just exclusively eat grass-finished beef or some other sustainably raised animal, and you're going to minimize animal suffering far, far, far more so than you ever could as a vegan. And making a statement to end animal factory farming, you know, it's a different topic. But I mean, if it's your personal mission to minimize animal suffering, then being a vegan is not going to do it. Being a grass-finished meat eater is going to have more impact, and that would have more impact on animal suffering than anything else. If your diet is all grass-finished beef, you're going to be the most ethical person there is with regard to animal suffering. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, again, unless you want to go the raw fruitarian route and have all your teeth fall out. Having said that, there are a number of places you can utilize to get grass-finished beef. I'm trying to put together a coalition of ranchers and farmers and other people that are going to interact with the carnivore community over this year. That's going to be something we're working on right now, trying to get ranchers that are interested. You can look at like the 2S Ranch out of Texas, run by J. Bart Simmons, wonderful man. He's been on the podcast. He has a great product. Support him. Butcher Box, who I have a relationship with, an affiliate relationship with, provides a wonderful product. I mean, the product is shipped from Australia, so there is you know, that particular issue. But in general, they are coming from sustainably raised animals that are on grass, that are not fed antibiotics, that are not fed hormones for those people that think those are important. I've got a link in the video you can click on if you want to get something from Butcher Box. You can save money. If you're a vegan and you're thinking about leaving veganism, this is a great way to do it. You can get it delivered to your door. It's tasty. The quality is high every time. I've used those guys for over a year now. I've been very pleased with the product. I don't eat 100% grass finished. I'm not in it for the ethics. I'm in it for the health. But anyway, this is something that I think you know, if we want to have an ethical discussion, this is probably the most effective way to minimize that. Okay, guys, subscribe, like, click on the links below. Check out the HBO podcast. You know, I think we've discussed some great guests coming on and have been on. And so I think, you know, the folks we had on yesterday prior to Bobby Risto, we did 3 episodes yesterday. We had 2 prominent cardiologists talking about how they deal with cholesterol and what their thoughts are on cholesterol and how to treat that. Because many of you guys on a low carb, high fat, ketogenic or carnivore diet will see your cholesterol rise. And it's a very important topic. And I hope you guys tune in and listen to that. So anyway, if you guys want to support Zach and I on Patreon, we'd appreciate it. Otherwise, you know, just listen and share the episodes, share the message. You know, as a community, we can take back our health. We have, you know, these giant food companies